And what's up, everybody? It's Thursday night, and we're going to be doing the college fantasy football week 5, the early slate. We're going to do the full breakdown. We're going to look at every single game on FanDuel and DraftKings, all the players, all the matchups. I'm going to give you my top 10s kind of at each position, probably go out to about 15 at the wide receiver, and give you a handful of tight end plays. I've been overlooking the tight end position mainly because FanDuel only, but I'm going to go ahead and throw those back in. Before we get started, I want to welcome everybody in. I'm your host, Michael Rathburn with rotocurve.com. You can find me on Twitter at FantasyRath. What we need you to do, especially if you're viewing this on YouTube, go ahead and sign up at rotocurve.com for free and get involved on the site. All of our content's free, and we absolutely need you involved over there in the forums, in the chat room. View all of our videos, our articles, our tools. We have a lot of statistical tools for college fantasy football and for NFL that are unique to the site. So definitely check it out, rotocurve.com, sign up for a free account. All right, let's get into it like we always do. We'll do the screen share with the spreadsheet. Apologize if we go a little bit long. It's a pretty big game slate as far as games set this week. So I may go a little long, but just bear in mind that I really put a lot of work into this week and also last week as well. There's a couple of sites out there now that are actually grading the quote unquote tout picks. So we obviously want to put up a good performance, and we did very well last week with our picks. One of the things you guys got to realize is that one of the things I strive for when giving out this college fantasy football picks is I'm not just going to feed you chalk plays. What that means is, a lot of guys out there will just give you the top 10 at each position, take all the high salary guys in great games, and then when you try to go make a lineup with all of their picks, you can't make a lineup. And so basically the picks become pointless if I can't utilize the information and build the lineup. So one of the things that you guys know from me as following me over the last few years is I'm not just going to give you all the expensive players. I'm going to give you, kind of half and half. I'm going to give you, the top shelf guys, and I'm also going to give you some mid-tier and some lower-tier guys. That way, everything I give you, you're going to be able to make lineups in your cash games, 50-50 heads-ups, and your GPPs, which are tournaments. So just wanted to give you that disclaimer. Again, there are some sites out there that are rating picks. Just want to let you know what separates us and my stuff from everybody else. I don't just hand out chalk plays. I give you plays that you can actually build lineups with. So let's pop over to the set. And, as I always do, I sort these in order, highest to low with the total. And these are the games, the featured games that I highlight in green are the ones that we're going to focus on as far as playing both sides. We give you the matchups. Now, I am using yards per game. And that's something that I with 4 games into the season, 3 games into the season, I've now migrated over to looking at this season's results. In certain cases, I do look at game logs and try to, consider level of competition. But for the most part, we're going to roll with it and see how it goes. So we've got the early slate for FanDuel and DraftKings. Now, the games here in orange is a FanDuel only game, Western Kentucky Rice. And this is a DraftKings only game, which is Iowa State, Kansas. All right, so just be aware that is the difference in the two sites this week. 3 games at the top this week, starting off with Baylor and Texas Tech. Baylor is a 17-point favorite, total of 88. This total is crazy sky high. Baylor with a projected total of around 52. Texas Tech with a projected total of around 35. Baylor is the #1 rushing offense in football right now. They've got a 3-headed monster for the most part, and they rack up a ton of yards on the ground. Now, the funny thing about it is their passing offense from a yardage perspective is low because they get out to these monster leads and they run the ball down everybody's throat. You got a guy like Seth Russell throwing 150 yards and 6 touchdowns. It's just absolutely insane. So you got to take that with a grain of salt. Obviously, we know that the Baylor passing offense is elite, and we also know that the Texas Tech defense is not elite. So you can play both sides here, absolutely, for sure. So you just got to, don't just go off the numbers, understand the context of the numbers. Baylor's going to be heavily owned. So from a tournament perspective, it's going to be a little bit tough. Coleman's going to be a guy, obviously, you're going to want to be on. But again, just be aware that you can't use them. If you're running multiple tournament lineups, you don't want to use them in every single one. Again, the ownership rate's going to be through the roof. He's going to be the number one guy that people gravitate to, him and Josh Doxson. So on the Texas Tech side, look, they're coming off of a very tough game at home against TCU, in which that game put up over 100 points. My take on this week, I'm actually fading Texas Tech, and I know that sounds a little bit crazy, but I don't like the spot here. I think that they're going to have an emotional letdown. I think Baylor could blow them out pretty heavily. Would not shock me if this game actually goes under the total, only because I think from the Texas Tech side, there could be some issues. Now, Baylor's got a pretty good defense. It's at home. It's at Baylor. Baylor is definitely in play now for a national championship, showdown here with TCU. My take on this, and you guys know I do a lot of handicapping with DFS. So I'm actually fading. Like I said, I'm fading Texas Tech this week. You won't see Mahomes on my list. And really, I'm fading the entire team. My concern is this game gets out of hand bad, and Texas Tech is not able to really go. Mahomes has got the knee issue, and we saw that happen last week, and he hasn't been practicing in full all week. I'm concerned that Mahomes doesn't run. It's going to limit the offense. Baylor could potentially blow the doors off them. I don't know if this is going to be a 52-35 game. Wouldn't shock me if this is, say, 45-17, 45-20, and Texas Tech really, takes one on the chin here. So I know that's probably not what the consensus is in the industry. But again, I do try to give you guys an angle and something different when I give out my picks. So again, I'm fading Texas Tech this week. Houston, Tulsa. Definitely no need to fade anybody in this game because we got a line of 7. We got a total of 80. We got a 43.5 to 36.5 projected total. Now, here's what you got to understand. On the Houston side, look, elite rushing offense, but a lot of those yards come from the quarterback, Greg Ward, who's going to be a top play this week. Houston's run defense is pretty elite right now. So we'll talk about on the Tulsa side, because Tulsa's got a pretty good running back. But they may be in a tough spot. So, that's something that you want to consider. Obviously, Tulsa's got a pretty good passing offense, and Houston's pass defense is terrible. So we like the quarterback from Tulsa. We like the wide receivers from Tulsa. And the running back situation is more of probably a tournament play in terms of you're going to grab a running back you feel like nobody's going to be on, but isn't a high-powered offensive game. Western Kentucky, Rice. Western Kentucky -7 with a total of 72. I think Western Kentucky's in a spot here. We saw what Baylor did to Rice, absolutely destroyed them. I know the game is at Rice, but I think Western Kentucky's in a spot here where this game could be very, very dangerous. Normally, you don't like laying points on the road, but here's the thing. We saw what Baylor did to Rice last week. Western Kentucky could put up, 5-6 touchdowns in the air, no problem here. Don't know about the 72, but I do feel pretty confident that Western Kentucky puts up 40. Not sure if Rice is able to get to 32. Western Kentucky's defense is pretty weak, but there's not a lot of offense on that Rice side. So, even though they've got a pretty good differential, also, on the run, I just don't have any confidence in that run game. There's a couple guys that we might be able to use, but I love the quarterback for Western Kentucky in this spot. He's definitely a top play for me, Doty. Love Higbee and love Taywan Taylor. Those are the guys that you're definitely going to want to lock in on. Not looking at Furby at all. Again, Western Kentucky, they don't really run, especially with their number one guy, Leon Allen, out. So running is kind of become, something that they don't do. So, Furby's a guy that I love that first week that he got action, but now you gotta stay off him. TCU, Texas, 14.5, 71 total. Gotta love TCU in this spot. Now, could have a little bit of a letdown coming off of the big win last week. But again, it's an in-state rival. It is against Texas. And this offense is clicking right now. And now the thing is with TCU, this wide receiving core is really banged up, and they just keep losing guys left and right. And Doxson had a monster game because he's really the only guy that Boykin, I think, trusts at this spot. I'm not really looking at any other secondary wide receivers for TCU. I'm not going to play the crapshoot there. But I think what's going to happen is they're going to run Aaron Green more instead of throwing the ball. So I think that what's going to happen is Doxson's going to get fed, but then those secondary receivers for TCU just aren't going to get as much looks. And I think that volume is going to go to Aaron Green. So that's kind of what we saw last week. Cal, Washington State, 18 is the line, 71 total, monster number. I'm not as high on this game. Look, I know it's a 71. It's an 18. That worries me. The 18 does worry me. Look, we know Washington State can put up the points, but this Cal team, may have a little bit better defense than what they've normally had in the past. So I think that it's a situation where we know that Washington State's going to elite passing offense, but it's on the road. They're heavy underdogs. I'm not sure that the upside is there as much with Washington State at this point. Could this game get to be 48-40? It could. I don't know if it's going to play out that way, and that's one of the reasons why I don't have Washington State. Again, I know I'm going against the grain, and a lot of people are going to be on Washington State. But again, I'm not going to be on Texas Tech, and I'm not going to be on Washington State this week. So we'll see how it plays out. Ohio State, heavy favorite against Indiana. Obviously an elite matchup for the running game of Ohio State with Elliott. Unfortunately, our guy, Jordan Howard's not going to be in play this week from Indiana. Going to be in a very tough situation going against an elite rushing defense and probably going to be behind. So Howard's just a guy I can't go near. Talking about some other games, Georgia Tech, North Carolina, not a lot there that I'm in love with on either side. Oklahoma, West Virginia, 6.5 is the line, 59 is the total. So it should be a very high-scoring, competitive game. My problem with West Virginia, they beat up on Maryland last week. The level of competition that West Virginia has played has not been that high. And I think Oklahoma could be in a spot here. This is a special Oklahoma team, and it would not shock me if Oklahoma is able to really, put a pretty good number up on West Virginia in terms of really being able to keep them in check. So I'm not high on this game as far as from a DFS perspective. Iowa State, Kansas. We know that Kansas is one of the worst teams in college football, but Iowa State's not that much better, and they're laying almost 17 points. Not a lot in this game. There's a little bit of value with the Kansas running back that we'll talk about. Nebraska, Illinois is an interesting game. 6.5 is the line, 57 is a total-ish. So close game. Here's the thing. Bad passing defense for Nebraska. So I do like the Illinois passing game in this spot. So Illinois' defense has been pretty good. Not, super high on Nebraska in this spot. I know Nebraska is a 6.5 favorite here, but I think the Illinois passing, I think the quarterback for Illinois is a sleeper. I think you can pair the quarterback and the wide receiver this week from Illinois as a tournament play for sure, because it may not be heavily owned. Some people might be just looking at the Nebraska side. Michigan State, Purdue. Michigan State, a heavy favorite, 3 touchdowns. Should be able to keep this game under control. The strange thing is you look at the Michigan State offensive numbers and they don't look great. It's mainly because they score pretty quick and then they rely on the defense. You see here the passing defense is not great, but the rushing defense is elite. The problem is what happens is they get out such a big lead, and the numbers are a little bit skewed. But I do think that there is an opportunity in this game. We did use the Purdue quarterback last week as a value play, and it came through in a big way. And I know a lot of people are not going to look at him this week because they're automatically going to look at the 16-point, the 17-point projected total and feel like there's no way I can use him again. Here's the thing. Michigan State, because they get out to such big leads, they do allow a lot of passing attempts. So I think the quarterback from Purdue is going to get volume here. And with so few value plays at the quarterback position this week, I do feel like there is a potential to use him. I do love the Michigan State wide receiver. We used him last week, got burned, but that was mostly game script issues. They didn't throw the ball all that much, so he just didn't get any volume. So it wasn't anything to do with him. Georgia, Alabama should be a very tough physical game, very close game. You know they're going to want to run Chubb. You know they're going to want to run Henry. Both quarterback situations are not good. I don't really love anybody in this game. I don't really see an angle either way. I'm not going to pay top shelf for running backs in that price range when they're going against just very tough defenses. I just don't like it. Oklahoma State, Kansas State. Again, nothing you see here on the grid for the differential. There's nothing really here that really sticks out to me as far as an edge, except for we will talk about the Oklahoma State running back situation. There's some late-breaking news that's come out, and there may be a real sneaky play on the Oklahoma State running back situation. NC State, Louisville, definitely love some players on NC State. It's a lower scoring projected total, so we look to the run game in games like this, and definitely with the news that Shadrack Thornton has been thrown off the team, Matt Days becomes an elite option in cash games at the running back position, and Jalen Samuels becomes a must-play pretty much at the tight end position because his uniqueness of carrying the ball and catching the ball. VTech Pitt, I don't ever really take anybody from VTech, and I don't really take anybody going against VTech. I know some people are on the quarterback for VTech, but I'm just staying away. I don't really see much of an edge there in any of this spot. Wisconsin, Iowa, normally, it looks like the, we had a two-headed monster with the running back situation. It looks like Deal has kind of emerged as the guy for Wisconsin. But, again, I don't like the spot. I think both these teams have elite run defenses. This could be a very ugly game. I don't even know if they can get to 45 as a total. I'm fading the game. I don't like anybody in the game. Florida State, Wake Forest, big time play here with Florida State as far as the run game goes. I know Wake Forest's run defense has been okay, but we did see Howard put up some pretty good run totals. Dalvin Cook is the play here, and we're going to talk about him. The percentage of offense that he represents from a running perspective, and Mario Pender being out with an injury, Dalvin Cook really becomes a guy. Look, they're ranked 26th in rushing offense. They don't throw the ball. And even though the numbers say that maybe Wake Forest's run defense is so-so, I think FSU is going to pound Dalvin Cook this week. I think Cook is in for a monster game, and he's somebody I'm definitely going to want to have a heavy ownership with. Missouri, South Carolina. The storyline in this game is that the Missouri quarterback has been suspended and the backup is going to start. So that does give us value as far as maybe a second quarterback or a tournament quarterback where we can plug in a guy at min salary and get some juice there. Northwestern Minnesota, these games are just going to be heavy run. So you got to like the running back from Northwestern. But again, other than that, that's all you're looking at. Duke, BC. I know some people are jumping on the running back, the backup running back for Boston College. But again, when I look at a projected total of 15 with a 36.5 overall, that's just something I can't put any stock in. And I just think this is going to be an ugly game. That's one of the lowest totals I've ever seen in a college game that I can remember. When you get to 40, that's pretty low in college. So there's really nothing of value for me in that game whatsoever. Let's jump over to the picks. At the quarterback position, try to give you 10 guys this week. We talked about Greg Ward. He's got a huge matchup, heavy total, and he does run, so Greg Ward is a guy. What I did this week is I came over here and I gave you a strategy. If you see a dollar sign, that's pretty much means a cash game play. And you see a G, that's going to mean a GPP, a tournament. And so, always in cash games, you're going to want to spend up at the quarterback position. Now, it's a little bit different when you go with the two quarterbacks. Your strategy does change because you've got to squeeze in one of these cheaper quarterbacks with one of your big guys. So, kind of what I'm looking at here, there is a lot of chalk here, but these totals are so high and the matchups are so supreme that it's really hard to get off of like a Boykin, a Russell, a Doty. You notice I don't have Mahomes. Like I told you, I'm fading Mahomes, and also Falk, I don't have him. Again, I could give you these top plays and give you all chalk. I just don't feel like that's really really doing any good. So, I love Ward, gotta love Boykin, gotta love Russell. Doty, I think for me, because you're getting a salary break on FanDuel at 9,400, kind of moves a little bit ahead of Boykin and Russell for me. But these guys are more tournament. You're going to have to, if you want to stack and take some of the cheaper guys on TCU and Baylor, that's kind of how you're going to have to do it. I do have Jared Goff in here. They are projected to score over 40. It's kind of hard to get away from him. Definitely like his price better on DraftKings at 8,600. Got Dane Evans in here as more of a mid-tier guy. If you wanted to go like Goff and Evans, and get a little bit of relief. It does look like DraftKings, just listening to people, it's been really tough playing over there as far as the salary has been really tight. So it looks like they did loosen up on the quarterback salaries this week, which is pretty good. In terms of value, I think that there's 4 guys, and mainly 3, because I think Howard is the guy like on DraftKings is a must. You got to look at him because he's only a 6,500. I feel much better about Howard going against Oklahoma probably than maybe I do like a Wes Lunt. Look, Wes Lunt has an incredible matchup, but he's a guy who can give you fits because he can go out there and lay an egg, but he could put up monster points. So again, tournament play for me. One of the things that you're going to want to look at is, getting a guy like Ward, Boykin, Russell Doty, and then who are the cheap guys that you're going to pair that with? Is it going to be a Wes Lunt from Illinois? Is it going to be a David Blow from Purdue? Again, you're saving some money. The thing is that, the numbers might not be there, but he might get yards and he might get garbage time, points. This is a guy that's interesting is Drew Lock from Missouri. And, we try to give you a value play every week. It didn't work out last week at the BC quarterback. We came out late that he either wasn't going to play or he's going to split time. So if you were in the chat room, I got that news around 10:30, and I told everybody to jump off him or go very light on the backup the quarterback for BC that we had. So this is the guy this week. We don't have to worry really about playing time. Drew Lock is a guy, especially on DraftKings at 4,300, but 5,100 on FanDuel. It really allows you to do a lot of things, and I think that's something that you definitely want to look at. Look, if you feel strongly that a Corey Coleman, a Josh Doxson are going to have monster games this week because they have monster games almost every week, and you need to fit these guys in, and you like Dalvin Cook as well, Drew Lock is going to be the direction that you're going to want to go. So definitely, that's a situation with him, but that's a value play of the week at quarterback. We don't know what he's going to do. He is pretty highly touted, but again, you're taking a risk. But a lot of times these $5,100 quarterbacks, most of the time they do pay off and hit floor. Let's jump on over to the running backs. Matt Days is the number 1 guy for me because the price is so ridiculous, 5,100, 5,300. One of the things I'm adding is the percentage of yards for that particular, that what they represent for the offense from a rushing perspective. So like Matt Days represents 44% of the total rushing yards for NC State. Now here's the thing. With Shadrack Thornton being suspended and thrown off the team, this is Matt Day's team, and they're going to run him pretty heavy this week. So you're getting about probably like a $7,000 running back, and you're getting him at 5'1", 5'3". So he's a must-play in cash. Here's the thing. With so many players in the player pool for CFB, you don't worry so much about player ownership as much. At least I don't, as far as like in the NFL, because there's a limited amount of games, there's a limited amount of players, and any value play in the NFL is going to get pounded. So like while Matt Day's ownership is going to be high, I don't necessarily run away from it in a tournament because again, I get him at such a great price. I'm not buying 20 carries and 60 yards in a cloud of dust. Like I'm buying some serious upside with a guy like Days. So I don't have a problem playing him in both. I did leave a dollar sign there. But again, because of the situation, I don't have a problem playing him in both. Dalvin Cook, he's all the way up to 8,800 on DK. That's a little bit tough for me. But again, if I'm going with the cheap quarterbacks, if I'm going like Lunt and like Locke as a crazy GPP or Howard and Lunt, and I'm just saving like $4,000 or $5,000. You got to use that money somewhere, and you got to use it on a guy like Cook. He represents 74% of Florida State's running game, and with Mario Pender out, this is going to be the Dalvin Cook show. Obviously, he's more attractive on FanDuel at 7,700. He's pretty much a lock and load on FanDuel. You cannot – I mean,
if you're building lineups without Days and Cook and Cash this week, there's probably something seriously wrong. I mean, those guys in Cash should be 30-40% owned, if not higher. It's just that great of a matchup. For the situation is huge. Now, we talked about the Tulsa situation where the matchup is tough. Actually, I got to switch this out. He's a GPP play. So the thing about Langer with Tulsa, look, it's a tough Houston D, but Langer has been a beast. I like him more on DraftKings because of the price, and I get the double flex, which kind of forces me to go with running backs. Look, he represents 60% of their rushing. So you really got to look at that. And, he makes a tournament play for me because, again, he's got a tough matchup, but he's, as far as the run defense goes, but it's such a high total that you figure if he gets, if they somehow don't go to Garrett and Lucas in the red zone and Langer gets his stuff, then it's going to pay off. But again, tournament play for me. Talked about Aaron Green. He's 8K on FanDuel, 7,800 on DraftKings. Represents 46% of the rushing yards. Boykin pretty much represents the rest of it. Tournament play for me only. Can't use them in cash and pay up that kind of price tag. If I don't know, I'm getting touchdowns because they go. It's Boykin and the Dachshund show, so I can't pay 8K for a guy that I'm looking at Fournette, Howard in a good spot. We've been using those bell cows, so that's somebody who I'm looking at in a tournament. Justin Jackson, not a lot of upside here, 6,300, 65. But he's 50% of the rushing offense. He's a cash game play for me because that's going to be a grind out game. Might be in a situation where he can go like 125 and 2 touchdowns or 125 and a touch. So you're going to be happy with that in cash. The Baylor running backs to me are GPP plays. And now Chafin, one of their number 2 guys, out. So somebody's going to step up. I know a lot of guys are going to jump on Jefferson for Baylor and feel like he's going to be the guy. But if you look at the game logs and you look at the percentage of yards that they represent, this is pretty interesting. Linwood is a touchdown machine. So you're paying serious money on Linwood, 8.1, 7.3, and he represents 32% of the rushing offense. I think the sneaky play here in tournaments is Terrence Williams. He's 4.9 on FanDuel. He's 5.2 on DraftKings. He represents 27% of the rushing offense, and you're getting him at a super cheap price because he just doesn't get the ball in the red zone. I think this is an interesting play. Look, they run for over 350 yards a game. Is Williams in a spot where he can go 150 in a touch? I think he is, and for me, that's incredible value. So I'm not going to be high on Linwood. I'm going to have some Williams shares. I think that is a very interesting spot. Look, Jefferson could end up getting the ball, and this play could go bust. But again, it's a high risk, high reward play. I'm not sure that a lot of guys are going to be on Terrence Williams. I think everybody's gravitating towards Jefferson. Ezekiel Elliott, Ohio State, you're paying big money, and he represents 49% of the rushing offense. Again, tournament play for me because I'm getting a bell cow. The only thing you worry about every week with Ohio State, if they blow the doors off somebody, they're going to pull everybody. So again, that's something that if I want to go heavy on a running back and I want a tournament, Ezekiel Elliott could very easily go for 150 and 3 touchdowns, but he could also go for 120 and none and get pulled. So that's why he's more of a tournament play for me. Keon Kinner from Kansas is a very interesting spot. Iowa State's defense is horrible. That's a DraftKings only play at 4.9. He represents 54% of the rushing offense on Kinner. So you with the double flex, you're going heavy on quarterback and cash. You got to find salary relief. So Kinner's a guy at 4,900. I think you got to roll with. Here's my sneaky play. Doing the research and was found out that it looks like both running backs from Oklahoma State are probably not going to go. But again, keep an eye on this Saturday morning on the site. If Jeff Carr is green lit, you got to use him in tournament or cash because he's 4,500 on FanDuel and he's 3,600 on DraftKings. I think you can go with him both. If he's going to start and you're going to get a guy that's going to get 15 touches, in a pretty competitive game, that's a steal. It's very rare that you're going to get a starting running back in college football at that kind of price. And I don't think a lot of people are going to be on this guy. It may not be somebody that everybody's on, but word's probably going to get out once this video hits. So, Jeff Carr is a guy that definitely keep an eye on as far as that min salary. Wide receivers. Look, we know about Corey Coleman. The guy's a beast. He represents 40% of the offense in the passing game. 8,600 on FanDuel, 7,900 on DraftKings, so you get a break there. I put cash. I think it's kind of both. It's kind of tough. Like if you go cheap at the running back spot and you go Coleman in cat, like it just depends on how you build your team. You can go with him in either or. Look, he's going to be heavily owned, but the upside is insane. Jay Lee comes in here. Now he's a tournament play for me. Price is pretty low, but he only represents 22% of the passing game. So for me, he's a tournament play. Look, if you're going to go like Russell, Coleman, Lee in a stack, and you're going to stack Baylor, I think that's the way you got to go. I don't think you can play Lee by himself. I think you've got to get the correlation. You just got to gobble up the Baylor passing game and kind of get those guys. Here's a guy that you definitely going to want to be on, DeMarcus Ayers. Look, you can go cash or GPP, I think, with this guy, because you're going to want to pair him with Greg Ward. Or if you don't go Greg Ward, you can still play him, without pairing. You don't necessarily need to pair him. But again, 66.7, 6.2, 33% of the passing game. Ayers is probably going to be a guy I'm going to have heavy ownership of this week. Geronimo Allison from Illinois. I put cash because of the price, and he gets massive volume. The goal is here that hopefully they can exploit the Nebraska passing defense. Burbridge did get us last week, but I got to go back to the well again this week, and hopefully that Connor Cook is going to throw the ball a little bit more. Look, he represents 48% of their passing game, which is crazy, and he's only 6,100 on FanDuel. He's 6,400 on DraftKings. I got to go back to the well again, not in tournaments because I'm scared of what's going to happen with his, but in cash, I'll go ahead and play him. The Nebraska wide receivers, Westerkamp and Riley. To me, tournament plays because they split the volume here. We see a 27% for Westerkamp, 26. I think Riley for me is the play as far as value goes, especially on DraftKings when he's only 3.7. So that's a huge play for me as far as definitely in a tournament. You notice I didn't have Armstrong in the quarterback, and again, it's really hard to recommend every single guy at a position. I do have to have a cutoff point, but I don't have a problem if you say, hey, I want to stack Armstrong with Westerkamp and Riley in the tournament because it might not be heavily owned when everybody's going to be stacking those big games. Dennis Parks is the guy that we talked about last week or the week before. The game script kind of got to the point where they actually removed him from the game, so we kind of got burned. But he's 45% of their offense, and he's only 5,900. I don't have a problem playing him in cash. Western Kentucky's defense is not good. I don't think they're going to blow the doors off Rice to the point where Rice is going to remove this guy from the game again. So, I do feel pretty confident. I'm not going to take him in a GPP, though, again, because of the risk that something, weird's going to happen. I know that sounds kind of odd. Like, wouldn't you probably go with him more in a tournament if you think he could get pulled? But he's so cheap that I think he hits floor. So I'm just worried that there's no upside there. So hopefully that makes sense. Doxson. Not a lot you have to say about this guy. 7,600 on DK, which is nice. Monster game last week, and with the wide receiving core banged up, I think you got to go back to the well and you got to go him again. Tulsa wide receivers, they're going to be pretty popular this week. The guy that I like, I actually love Garrett. Garrett is a beast. He's a big dude. He's a beast, and he's got some guns, and he's really taking advantage of this offense. He's 39% of their total pass game. Now, he doesn't get the touchdowns that Lucas gets, but boy, I literally, especially on FanDuel, when I'm getting him at 6,600, that's a serious catch game play for me. And I get a guy who's representing 39% of his team's passing receiving yards. So I love Garrett on FanDuel. Look, man, you can run Ayers, Garrett, Burbridge. That's a pretty sick wide receiving core, that you're getting around 6K on average. So, that's kind of the play there. Jakeem Grant from Texas Tech. I am fading Mahomes. This is a tournament play for me because I want a piece of it. He only gets 26% of their passing yards. So, again, it's kind of a high-risk play. but he might not be heavily owned, so he might be a guy you can take a look at. Tywan Taylor, FanDuel only at 6'8". He represents 30%, and Dangerfield's not really been involved in the offense as much because he's hurt. And you gotta love Western Kentucky in the spot. So if you're gonna, I think Taylor for me, like if I go Doty at quarterback, absolutely, I'm gonna want to stack Taylor and then Higbee for sure on FanDuel. So wide tight ends, Higbee, Samuels at NC State. I don't mind paying up because he actually could get some 5 to 6 carries. So he could get some rushing yards, which is nice. Mark Andrews, Oklahoma, he's only at 3,300. And then the guy I pretty much put in every week because he's so cheap is Cam Sarine from Wake Forest. That's going to wrap it up this week, guys, for CFB early slate. Hope you enjoyed it. I know we kind of go pretty long now with these videos, but again, I try to cover every game, and really, we've been very successful with college fantasy football this year on FanDuel and DraftKings. So we want to keep the momentum going. And I do feel like, Benny Ricciardi had a big hit over the weekend with NFL, and I feel it coming. We've had a few guys hit big in CFB this year, but I feel something coming in the next week or two where I think we're going to have either, somebody from RotoCurve, whether it's somebody that is involved with us or somebody who's on the site, I think is going to hit another big GPP with some of these plays. So I want to wish you guys the best of luck. We'll see you Saturday morning in the chat on RotoCurve. Thanks again.